Eighth graders, yay! We finally get to start our first math lesson of your 8th grade year. We're going to look at some review topics to start off for the first couple weeks. And so hopefully these review topics will just help you refresh any missing skills and will help you be successful in our first topic. Let's jump right in and look at adding and subtracting integers. Integers would be positive and negative numbers and zero. So can I add and subtract integers? We obviously would love to practice these without a calculator as well. Let's start with the word opposites. And what are opposites? And I always like to start with an example of like, what's the opposite of up? And you'll tell me down. And the opposite of left. And you'll tell me right. Well, what if I said, what's the opposite of the number 5? And I bet many of you tell me -5. But what if I gave you what's the opposite of a -7? I bet you would all tell me +7. And then what if I gave you a fraction? What if I said, what's the opposite of a half? And I bet you would tell me -1/2. So opposites are super important, especially for this lesson. And I'm going to type this here because all opposites added together equals 0. So if I were to take 5 plus -5, I get 0. And if I were to take -7 plus 7, I get 0. And if I were to take 1/2 plus a -1/2, I get 0. So all opposites do add up to 0. So let's go ahead and jump into probably a really basic problem here when it comes to addition. And I'm just going to have a +3 plus a +5. And I know you guys all know what that answer is. But I want to work it out showing you my plus and minus signs. So because the 3 is a positive, I'm going to represent it with 3 plus signs because it's a positive. And because the 5 is positive, I'm going to represent it with 5 more plus signs. And so if you wanted to find your answer for this problem, 3 plus signs and 5 plus signs, you're going to have a total of a +8 plus signs. And so this is one way where we can do plus symbols to help us to figure out what our answer would be. We also could very easily use a number line. So if I go ahead and look at a number line here, and I'm going to tell you this is 0. And so we're going to always start at 0, and it says we're going to go 3 spaces to the positive. 1, 2, 3. But we're going to add 5 more positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we were to look at this number line, we can also always use a number line to help us with addition. I personally like the plus and minus signs, but we can use a number line as well. Let's go ahead and review with a new problem here. What if I said a +3 plus a -5? What would that look like? And we need to be careful. +3 means I'm going to have 3 positives. And the -5 means I'm going to have 5 negatives. And the reason I like my plus and minus signs is because we know opposites add up to 0. So 1 positive and 1 negative is going to cancel out because it's going to equal 0. And another one is going to cancel out. And a third one is going to cancel out. And I have no more that will cancel out because I have no more plus signs. And so my answer here is actually a -2 because I have 2 negative symbols left. Let's look at that again, but let's kind of turn that around and talk about it. What if the 3 was negative and my 5 was positive? What would that look like? Well, I would have 3 negative symbols and 5 plus signs. And we know that opposites equal 0. So if we cancel out a plus and a minus, that's 0, and another one, and another one. And what do you have left? Because there's nothing else to cancel out. 2 plus symbols. So you would have a positive 2. Whereas the answer before was a negative 2. And last but not least, for addition, we could write it out, and I'm going to look at a negative 3 plus a negative 5, and this would mean 3 negatives and 5 more negatives, and I have nothing to cancel out because they're all negatives, and my answer is a negative 8. So hopefully this is a review for you on positive and negative symbols as far as addition goes. I do want to look at, for a second, a subtraction example. And I'm just going to tell you right now, I want you to change all of your subtraction to addition. We are going to change subtraction to addition. And the reason we want to change all of our subtraction to addition is because then we can just use what we know when it comes to addition. So we'll talk about how we can do that. Let's look at, for example, 5 take away a negative 2. I'm going to show you how to change this to addition, and you're going to notice it's actually a really easy problem. We're always going to keep the first number. So I'm going to keep it 5. We're always going to change the subtraction because that's our goal. We want to change subtraction to addition. And we always want to take the opposite. We talked about opposites. So what is the opposite of a negative 2? Well, it's actually a positive 2. And these are actually the exact same thing. 5 take away negative 2 is the exact same thing as saying 5 plus 2. And I think we all like 5 plus 2 so much better because we know that that is 7. And it's just easier for us. We're used to looking at problems like that. So I want us to make sure that we are changing all of these. I'm going to help you with another one in changing it. If I have negative 8 minus a negative 13, we keep the first number. We're going to keep it negative 8. We're changing subtraction to addition. And we are taking the opposite of that negative 13, which would be a positive 13. And now we go back to looking at our plus and minus signs. If I have 8 negatives and I have 13 positives, I know that all 8 negatives and all 8 positives cancel out, and what do I have left? 5 positives. Last one we're going to look at is what if I have a negative 5 take away a positive 2? Well, we want to change this as well. So get into the habit. It's going to be part of our rules when we solve equations is change all subtraction to addition. So we're going to keep the negative 5. We're going to change from subtract to add. And the opposite of that positive 2 would be a negative 2. So this problem is negative 5 plus negative 2, which is a negative 7. So on your worksheet today, you can write it on a blank piece of paper, but I just want us practicing adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. That's it.